Good morning, YouTubadors and YouTubians. Saturday, we got a little bit of rain, not enough to do anything, just a little sprinkle. But it helps. It was enough I didn't have to water the remaining tomato plants and peppers. Today I want to tell y'all, I got a lot of people asking, they want me to tell them more about me and stuff. I'm going to tell you today how I got each one of my dogs, the story behind that. That way, when you see them, oh, we got them this way. I got here about 2 in the afternoon, let's see, September 22nd of 2012. I'll tell you the short story of how I came to be here before that. I had a job offer. I was in Florida. A friend of mine had her father had passed away, and she had a lot of items she wanted me to sell on eBay. So I was staying in Palm Beach Gardens, pretty fancy place too. And in that meantime, I was searching for. I'd just gotten divorced, or was going through that, and. So I had a job offer in Ketchikan, Alaska. They had offered me the job a couple years before, and I turned it down. And so I took them up on it this time. I went and did the drug testing, all that. It was set in stone. All I had to do was get there, and they were paying for that. And then I also had a job offer in Little Rock, Arkansas, that paid very well at another printing facility. And then also a friend of mine who I've known since 3rd grade. We went to grade school together and junior high and all that. She says, "Hey, we got this property in Arkansas. My husband. I hadn't met her husband at that time. My husband's already out there. He's getting things ready. If you want to move out to Arkansas and help him, you can probably find some work around there." And I'm like, man, that's because I could not, I made good money doing printing, but I couldn't stand it. I just dreaded it. The hours were terrible. You always work nights. You worked a long 12 hours, maybe some. I've worked 3 or 4 days straight. We made good money doing that. We volunteered for it, and sometimes you didn't. But anyway, to cut that story short, whoops, I bumped the tripod. I'm sorry. I wound up choosing this. Sorry. I just wanted some kind of an adventure, something new. So I arrived here. I drove all the way from Florida. That was a brutal drive. Just driving through Florida itself, from South Florida to the top, is terrible. And I got here, I drove pretty much nonstop. I got here about 2 p.m. on September 22nd of 2012. And pretty tired. Well, I wasn't up that late that night. Well, the next morning I get up, and it's September 23rd, and there's 2 dogs in the front yard. All he had at the time was 2 dogs, and they were back in a kennel in the yard. And they were not small puppies. They were probably, and I'm pretty good at guessing dogs' age. They were approximately about 10 months old, and the vet confirmed that. Agreed. So they were just playing in the yard, real friendly beagles, brother and sister. You could tell they were brother and sister, the exact same size, same markings, a little different. So I named them Waldo and Lucy, because my friend was in the dog rescue, so I knew she would want me to keep them, or at least till we could get them a better home. And I'm thinking, I kind of jumped the gun. I said, well, I'll keep them, and I named them Waldo and Lucy. And I'll show you, there's a picture coming, Waldo and Lucy. And so we just kept them around. We put up a fence, and just more dogs kept coming. In this part of Arkansas, you see dogs everywhere, just running loose. I've watched them dump them right across the street. If they know somebody likes dogs, that's where they'll dump them. Or they just dump them in horrible places. They just don't care. You know, they will not spay and neuter their pets. And so that's how I came to get Waldo and Lucy. And Lucy passed away 4 years ago. I looked out the previous night, the window the previous night, and she was running around with Lily, perfectly healthy. I had spent time with them every day. There was nothing out of the ordinary. She was not sick. She ate perfectly. I found her laying there in the middle of the yard. She was dead. So I took her to the vet's office. I was waiting for the vet to arrive, and the vet checked out her, felt around her stomach, and she said that she thought that her stomach had gotten twisted. But I had mushrooms out in the yard. They never ever bothered them, and so that could have been but I didn't see any that were nibbled on, and so we just, well, I'll never know. And she was the most gentle dog, and that really hit me hard. And that's how she passed away. But anyway, we're talking about how I got him. And the next dog to come along was Wally. Now, there was a house about a mile from where I was staying, and they had a lot of walker hounds. And one of their males, Charlie Brown, I've got pictures of him. Yes, sir. What do you need? What is it you need? Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown. What do you want? Are you asking for a milk bone? I just happen to have one. You want a milk bone? Want a milk bone? Charlie Brown. Be gone with you. Be gone. So I put Charlie Brown up. He would hang out. He'd wake me up 2 in the morning wanting a milk bone. So I'd give him a milk bone. But he had puppies, and little 3-month-old Wally would just wander around. He'd just wander around. Well, I hurt my back really bad January 1st of 13, and I was on a walker, and I heard all kinds of commotion come from outside. Wally had dug him his way into the yard with the older dogs, and he just at that point said, this is where I'm going to live. So I named him Wally. Look, there was no other name to fit him but Wally. So I named him Wally. He was accident prone. I don't know how many times I've had him to the vet to get stitched up. Waldo bit off a piece of his ear once. And he was a good dog. And he passed away this past May 5th. But he was, his breed, they just don't live that long. His father was about 8. I think Wally was 9. So he was perfectly healthy, he got sick. He actually dug so much, he bled so much. I got home and there was nothing I could do. But and we had to have him put down. So anyway, the next dog to come along was, who do I got out there? But he didn't get any more for a while. I picked up a lot of, strays and that, and we had kennels everywhere, finding them homes. And I'd stayed there about 1.5 years, not even that long, about 1 year and 3 months. And I moved into a house in the town. And then I bought this place, and Wally was staying out. He was still staying at that original farm. So I brought him out here first, and then I missed Lulu. Lulu was the next dog. Out at the ranch I'd worked at, Lulu, a friend of mine had come down in his travel trailer, and he was staying. They own their own private campground, the people I worked for. So he was staying there, and he was helping me at the ranch. And here's this little young puppy beagle. You couldn't get near her, very skittish. And one day I had a cheeseburger from McDonald's, and I got her. She would just slink up to you, and I got her up there to me to trust me and petted her, and then I took her home that day. Lulu was a strange one. Every day I'd come home, there'd be mason jars in the yard, and I'm like, where'd they come from? Every day there'd be another one, and I'd put them up where none of the dogs could get to them. Well, I caught her one day. She'd get in there just one a day, and she'd grab a mason jar and bring it out. And then every day about 2 o'clock, she'd just start running around everywhere, barking at bugs. I used to call that the bug tangent. And so I had Lulu 9 years, almost 9 years. She passed away about almost a year ago, last October 19th. And she was a real good dog. Her and Lucy didn't get along. I had to separate them. Originally, all my dogs were in the same yard, but you know, so many fights, you break them up. But they all had nice sized big yards. And so then we moved out here. I brought all Lulu, Waldo, Lucy. You think I'm getting confused now. I call Lily Lulu all the time, man. Well, I brought all 4 of them out. That's what I had. So I was working in a pawn shop in town, and somebody had brought in, I think it was 14 puppies. And only one of them was tan. They were all the same color, the same size. I got a picture of that. And so I picked the tan one out. She was the most ornery one. And named her Lily. Brought her out. They weren't no more than 8 weeks old. And she could fit her head down in my cup. Speaking of cup. So I named her Lily. Still don't know what breed she is. I think she's got some Rhodesian Ridgeback in her. She's scared of her own shadow. Always has been. But she'll come up to me. She won't come up to anyone else. Never has. My brother was the only one that she would trust. And, you know, it's just nobody comes here, so she doesn't trust anybody. Lulu was the same way. And so I still got Lily. She's 7 or 8. Yeah, 7. I got her in 14. So she's been real healthy. She's the most gentle dog ever. And boy, Waldo I started bringing her out as a puppy, and Waldo he would take to her, and she'd always hang around Waldo and Lucy, and then she started to look like Waldo. Now she acts like Waldo, does everything Waldo does. And them two are inseparable, and they're in the same yard. I still got them both out there. And one night, my friend was running an ad on Facebook about Libby. They were going to put her down in Oklahoma. And I said, I'll take her. So I went to Oklahoma, got a ticket for not wearing a seatbelt, but I was wearing my seatbelt. But you can't argue with them. I remember that. So I went, met the lady halfway, at the Oklahoma line, picked up Libby, and I've had her ever since. I thought the plan was to put her in the yard with the others, and it didn't work out. Immediately they didn't want her in there, so I had to build her a temporary shelter around a tree with fence. By the time that got done, it was just 10 feet high, covered up. I'd bring her out every day, but man, she could jump. She can jump 10 feet straight in the air, and she would get out. But then I built her permanent one now. This is getting too long. And then we're going to skip to I've had several fosters out here, probably 3 sets of 2. So I've raised 6 fosters. I don't really like doing that because I get attached to them, and then you got to let them go. And then the last one I got would be Miss Rooster. I was running the shelter in town. We would get dogs from other shelters in other states because we could place them up north, and so we would you know, they would give us money and we would take the dogs and then we'd take them up north. So I walked in and the first thing I saw when I opened the door to the shelter was Rooster. I'm like, man, that dog don't belong here. And I was thinking of getting a little dog. And I'd brought several home to try them out, and just none of them, you know, fit. And brought Rooster home, and I've had her ever since. Y'all know Miss Rooster. He's spoiled. So that's how I got my dogs. I better get off here because this thing's going to be forever. So, any other questions, feel free to ask in the comments. But that's how I got my critters. And I don't have any plans to get any more. It's, you know, it's a full-time job to have that many dogs. And it's getting easier, but, you know, I don't want, I want them to live as long as they can live. That's what I want, so. All right, guys, happy trails. Oh.